Morning. Minutes after 6 o'clock last night, Monday night, our JSO narcotics unit was in the Riverview area of northwest Jacksonville doing an undercover narcotics operation. They were out in that neighborhood, and I kind of want to clarify this point. Based on the double shooting that we had over the weekend with a 12-year-old and her mother, that's about 4 blocks from where our incident occurred last night. And narcotics detectives were in that area because we believe that the shooting of a 12-year-old and her mother has a direct nexus to it. The logical state of affairs would be to work the narcotics aspect of that case, and that's exactly what we were doing yesterday evening. This was about midway through the day that narcotics had been working and found themselves in that area, again, based on not a direct connection to this house where the officer-involved shooting was located, but just into the area in general based on the two and the potential that it was drug-related and working the narcotics aspect of that. So we facilitated a drug buy from the residence located at 9136 4th Avenue. And within a minute or so of that drug transaction, the narcotics detectives returned to continue the investigation from the house where we bought the narcotics from. And when we exited the vehicle, the undercover detectives, they encountered 4 subjects at the residence at 9136 4th Avenue. The detectives were wearing their tactical vests, clearly marked with police, on the front and on the back, and with the JSO badge emblazoned on the front of the tactical vest. The subject that they encountered, there were 2 in the carport area, one who was exiting the front door, and one off to the left of the house. It was at a burn barrel. The 3 detectives who exited the unmarked car ordered the suspects to the ground. 2 of them complied. One, exiting the front door of the house, began to flee, and the other subject turned and faced towards the detective who was running towards the suspect at the front door. So you've got 3 detectives exiting the car, one of them heading towards the subject at the front door who is beginning to run. The driver of the vehicle, our shooting officer, engaged the suspect who was armed. What he witnessed from that subject was he witnessed him raise his shirt and reach towards the handle of a revolver in his waistline. That undercover detective gave commands for that subject to stop. Seeing that he was facing towards the one detective, he gave him the directions to stop when the subject did not, fearing for the safety of not only himself but the other detective who was running towards the subject who was coming out the front door. That detective fired 2 shots at that subject. He was struck both times and hit in both his extremities, and then in his side back area here, the area that was bladed or facing the detective when he turned to face the other detective. Fire rescue was called to the scene, and he transported the subject to UF Health. He was taken to surgery and is currently listed in stable condition, still in the hospital. The involved detective is a 16-year veteran who was placed on administrative leave, which is pretty standard per our policy. The subject had, as in the photos here to my left, this is a Taurus 38 revolver. It's fully loaded with 1 spent shell casing in it. That subject is 31-year-old Kevin Wayne Smith. He was absentee booked and charged with possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. Mr. Smith is a convicted felon from a Little Champ robbery that he committed back in 2003. He served time for, was out, and is a convicted felon for that. The other 3 subjects were charged with sale of cocaine and armed possession of marijuana as other charges. We had Harry Swinton. Harry Swinton is a 28-year-old male. He was charged with armed possession of marijuana. He was a subject to the very far left as the detectives exited the car. He had a firearm in his possession. He was a concealed weapons permit holder. He was also a marijuana holder with that weapon. And 2 of those shouldn't mix very well. Terry Smith was 58. He was charged with possession of cocaine and possession of marijuana. Wayne Green, 47, was charged with sale of cocaine and possession of marijuana. And then we had Alonzo Jones, who was 48, charged with sale of cocaine and possession of marijuana. both of those, or all these individuals, the PIO will have the information and their arrest dockets and their criminal histories that you can get them. So within this carport area, there were 2 armed subjects. Inside the area, which is where you see here to my right, this is the drug cache that they had within there. Had their Glock handgun sitting next to their drugs, and there is a pretty good amount of pills, and cocaine, crack cocaine, powdered cocaine, marijuana, all different kinds of pills, cash, all labeled for or all packaged for sale, and all within proximity of armed people on the front porch of a residence selling drugs. Back in September 2nd, I got asked last night, had we have any previous history at that location? Back on September 2nd of 2015, the Sheriff's Office received a 911 call reporting drug sales at that residence as well. We investigated and made no arrest at that time based on that 911 call that we received from there. This is really a highlight of the dangerous job that the men and women assigned to our narcotics unit encounter on a daily basis. I mentioned last night the nexus between drugs and violence and guns, and you see the nexus and the connection directly right here. The drugs in location to the guns in relation to the armed individuals who, for whatever reason, decided at the orders of the police to not reach for the gun, to do so. I will point out that Mr. Swinton, who was armed with the gun, he complied with the detective's orders to get on the ground, as did Mr. Jones, complied with the detective's orders to get on the ground. Both of those individuals are today without any bullet holes in them because they complied with the officer's directions. The subject, Swinton, who was armed with the gun, why he's armed with the gun in possession of marijuana just beats me, but he was. But he complied, and he did not get shot by the detective because he complied with the orders. The individual that we decided that Mr. Smith, who did not comply, deadly force was used on him. I mentioned last night the State Attorney's Office was at the scene last night. They conduct a individual separate investigation into the use of deadly force in this case, as do we. Once that's completed, the administrative review of the officer's use of deadly force in this case will be conducted with a response to resistance board. That will be in the future as this case completes. The administrative review comes forward. Again, the dangerous job that the narcotics detectives face is really highlighted by this sort of danger, and it's done on a daily basis that these narcotics detectives are out there on a street level basis encountering drugs users and drug sellers who are armed many times, multiple times armed. It's a miracle that this doesn't happen more often. It really does make me shake my head to think just how silly somebody has to be to refuse the orders of a police officer in the midst of their drug sales. I can take some questions.
Chief, are any of these individuals facing charges for the Sunday shooting at the
No, and again, that's what led us out there into that neighborhood, and we're still working through interviewing them. We interviewed some of them last night. We'll continue our efforts to see if there is a relationship, and there may or there may not be. Again, this is 4 blocks away from where this shooting occurred. We think there's a drug nexus to that shooting. Here are drug sellers 4 blocks away from it, and drug buyers and drug people who are around there. Are they related? It's really hard to say. It may be too early to say, but it certainly gives us some viable leads to follow up on and some people to talk to. And we will continue those efforts, not only in this case, but other cases that we think are drug-related. These are standard protocols that we'll do when these cases occur, and they're drug-related murders, drug-related shootings. Part of the approach that we're taking is investigating the drug aspects of that. The people who investigate the drug aspects of that are our narcotics units, and we will continue efforts just like this today, tomorrow, and next week.
Do you think you made a dent in crime in this neighborhood?
If you live next door to somebody selling that, armed on their front porch, I'd be willing to say you made a dent in it. in the bigger scheme of things, it's hard to say, but I can tell you right now, there's a little bit of marijuana, some pills, and some cocaine that isn't being served today, and 4 people who aren't serving it. And again, this house, like I said, we go back to 2015, somebody reported that it was being sold there.
And were they the residents of this house?
I don't know.
Chief, just for clarification, the officers made a buy, went back to the vehicle, and then went to make the arrest. Is that the
Yeah, Roger. Within just like a minute, and really without going into the whole lot of tactics of how we do this, we facilitate these undercover buys, and sometimes it's detectives, sometimes it's other drug users who are working with us or working for us, and within a minute or so, maybe 2 minutes of that sale being made, the takedown units return and complete the investigation.
So the officers that did the takedown are the ones that did the buy?
No, they're not.
I'm sorry to clarify, this was Mr. Smith's gun.
Well, that was the gun. I don't know if it is Mr. Smith's gun, but that's
But
the gun
that's the
Mr.
gun
Smith
he was
had in
holding.
his possession and was reaching for and had his hand on, facing towards one of the undercover detectives.
And I don't know if you said there were Mr. Smith and the 2 Mr. Smiths.
They're not related, no. It was Smith and the Jones, and just common names. You know, the officer, undercover detective in this case, is doing okay today. It's a frightening thing when these occur. I've gone out and worked with the narcotics unit repeatedly. This is a very high stress, high danger situation that they're involved in. Again, these people selling drugs and using the drugs find themselves armed many times. The fact that you end up having to use deadly force in a situation like this is it's frightening. And again, you're worried about protecting yourself. You're worried about protecting your partner. And you know, when these things occur, it's a life-changing thing for the officers that are involved.
Did this go in immediately after the undercover drug buy? Was there a quick lapse in time?
Maybe a minute, maybe 2 minutes, Scott, if that. And it's just around the corner, and then facilitate making your U-turn and hitting in with the takedown units.
Do those bottles lead you to any other people by names or anything? Do you ever connect any of those prescription bottles to them?
Yeah, it's again part of that follow-up that we do. It's obviously not concluded today, just as the relationship to this case may or may not have to the shooting of the 12-year-old. Our narcotics unit doesn't wrap this up today. They'll look at whoever was prescribed those pills, where we could have gotten those pills, or where the subjects could have gotten those pills. That's more than just one person's amount of pills, and we'll go back through and follow those up and make a determination where those pills came from. And
Just they all painkillers?
I don't know what I don't know. I have to assume that's not antibiotics that they're serving.
And what board reviews the shooting? Is it a response or resistance?
It's our response to resistance board here at the sheriff's office.
And how long is that process?
It really depends on the state attorney's investigation. Once they conclude their investigation into the use of deadly force in this, they will provide the sheriff's office their conclusion. Once that conclusion is reached, our investigation would be concluded at that period of time. That would handle the criminal aspect of it, if you will, and then moves over to the administrative. So it could be months before that occurs.
Smith's status, is he stabilized?
Yeah, this morning we checked, he's listed in stable condition. He's absentee booked and charged with possession of a firearm by convicted
Do you know
felon.
if he'll likely be taken to jail anytime soon?
I don't know, Scott. As soon as he's able to be transported from UF Health, we will absentee or book him into the jail.
What number of officers off shooting is this year?
I'll have to get that for you. Get the-
Number- okay.
okay.
The officer that shot him, how many years has he been on?
16-year veteran.
And he was undercover, or is that their?
Yeah, he's assigned to the narcotics unit. He is undercover. Again, why I wouldn't release his name. Normally I would release the officer involved's name, but his status and acting as such, today or yesterday in this shooting, he was acting as a takedown. The next day he could be acting in the undercover capacity, protecting his identity, allows him to continue those investigations and protects his safety as well.
Could you give us an idea of, are these like logo dealers, are they pretty high up there?
I would say they're mid to low level dealers. I would say they're low level in general, but low level dealers. You pull a gun on the cop or go to, don't raise above a low level in my opinion. But, you know, it's sale quantity, street level quantity that you have packaged there. The dime bags of marijuana, the $10, $20 bags of marijuana, and the crack cocaine, which is individually packaged. That's kind of a street level kind of thing that goes on.
Did the shooting, obviously Mr. Smith will face further charges for that, for pulling the gun. Did the other 3 men, were their charges remain as drug charges, or because the gun was involved, does that impact them at all?
It could. The state will review that as to whether they want to charge them with an arms sale of that. I know Mr. The one with
The other Smith, Terry Smith?
the Swinton actually had the gun in his pocket,
Okay.
although he had a permit for it. You can't have the gun and the drugs together in your pocket. So he's charged with armed possession. The
Will
state.
he likely lose his life?
That's part of what we'll look at, deal with the Department of Agriculture, who issues those concealed weapons permits.
And Chief, how much cash is there?
We've got to total it up. Total, there was some odd $7,000 in cash that was taken from the house. This was taken from a small area that's like a laundry room that's underneath the carport, but total from the house between the carport area and inside the house was
That's the
close to
laundry room
$7,000.
amount.
Yes.
And total cash and how much?
Total cash was around $7,000. Yeah.
Okay.
And Chief, just for clarification, did Smith reach, display, or pull his gun, just so?
He lifted his shirt, had his hand on the gun, and this comes from not only the involved detective, but the witness officers that are there. We put this together as a kind of accumulative information, but the shirt came up, hand went on the gun, orders went to stop and drop it. He continued to have his hand on the gun, and as opposed to wait to see what happened, that isn't the prudent thing to do.
And to clarify, I would want to ask about that. That is training. If they breach, that's what the authorization to open fire is training for, or is it at the point?
You know, each case is individual, but based on the fact that the subject's attention turned towards another detective, maybe, you know, you can't suppose what he maybe did or didn't see, but the fact that his attention was trained towards the detective running towards the man at the front door. Shirt came up, hand goes to the gun. That's enough justification to the use of deadly force to protect yourself or somebody else.
And sir, the detective did see the butt of the gun.
Oh yeah, he was clearly able to identify it as a gun, and as a matter of fact, it was a revolver. Enough just to recognize that. So,
Anything else?
thank you for your time.
Have fun at City Council.